Rose and Terrence coming back with his aggressive Murloc deck, but now we've got just a standard tournament format. So it looks like Eloise is up 1-0 in this series with a really heavy control paladin build, and TicTac has his Quest Warrior.
So it's actually a really interesting thing, Control Paladin, because the hype is all about, oh, aggro Murloc and mid-range Paladin with a variety of Kodos and Primordial Drakes and Curator. But there's the other forgotten archetype of the mid-range Control Paladin, right? Which can afford to run big dragons that have more impact.
Yeah.
And Deathwing is exactly one of those guys. So I feel like not enough talk about that deck is happening. And
well,
it is
Eloise
definitely one of the best decks.
She's trying to start the conversation.
Yeah.
She's been on a hot streak right now. She finished second in the most recent Streamers Cup, and she has been performing incredibly well as one of the premier competitive players on Team Tempo Storm. So she's 5-1 right now. I'm not positive on what TicTac's record is. I would assume 5-1, but it is possible that he got paired up at a 4-2. So we'll let you guys know as soon as we find out exactly how he's been doing so far into this tournament. So we do see Murlocs coming into the hand of Eloise, which means she does have an aggressive start and just curves a little bit higher than some of the Paladins that we've been seeing.
I mean, Primordial Drake versus Deathwing. One of them wins you control matchups, the other one beats aggro. So I think it's a matter of figuring out exactly what you want to do for your dragon slot. She might be playing two of them. That's a possibility as well. You know, that's happened before.
Yeah.
We've seen people play two different dragons to really top at like a win condition in and of itself. Because if you think about Deathwing, you clean up a board from aggro decks, usually clock them right away. And against control decks, you do the same thing, where they literally can't deal with it unless they're value generators.
Deathwing is a panic button.
Yeah.
He's your last resource when you have absolutely no chance left, and maybe he gives you a shot to win the game. So it's never a bad choice to have in one of these Paladin decks. It's not the most conventional choice, but I can definitely see the reasoning behind why you would put it in your deck over, you know, maybe one copy of Primordial Drake. It just adds that little bit of flexibility. So TicTac gonna go ahead and try to clear the board as much as he can right now. He does have Sulfurous online, but Eloise is putting on a lot of pressure, and it's on TicTac to be able to continue to remove the board and eventually just push damage with Die Insect.
Yeah, TicTac with the hero power right now that wins games. The issue is, against something like Deathwing, it's not particularly good.
No.
As it is one of the reasons, actually, why Deathwing is so strong in the metagames that you play it in is because it lets you beat control matchups. And in the case of TicTac, you know, there's some removal, spot removal, like Shield Slam, oftentimes late game no longer online. There's no more armor. And AoE has been used during the game for control purposes, so execute hard to enable, and you're looking at hero power having to hit the target and keep that execute for later. So card advantage not being on TicTac's side, this is looking quite grim.
No, and that's one of the big issues with the Quest Warrior is once you get to this point and you have Sulfurous online, you're dealing 8 damage per turn. Yes, it's very strong, but you usually have little to no resources to follow up after that. So now Eloise is able to go wide on board, which essentially nullifies the hero power, makes it incredibly inconsistent. And at that point, TicTac has nothing to fight back with.
Yeah. The Primordial Drake here, a blessing for TicTac as he's able to clean up most of the small minions left over, but that does not mean the game is under control just yet. Eloise has more resources in hand, he's aware of that, and yeah, there's a Ragnaros Lightlord that hasn't been played yet.
It's gonna be 8 heal to the face likely for Eloise, extending this game even further.
Yeah, you have to go wide though, don't you? I mean, it's kind of tricky.
I think so. She's got a lot of options, but one target on board against Ragnaros hero power is usually not the strongest.
Yeah, you're probably looking to play... I mean, you could play Finja with the Vile Fin and the Gentle Megasaur. That's a high amount of power you're putting down, but the Megasaur does die to the Drake. I think it's still acceptable though.
Obviously, you're risking Finja dying to the hero power, but if the Finja lives, then maybe you get 2 more Murlocs, your board is that much wider, and you don't have to commit those resources from hand.
Insta-pick Sunkeeper Tareem for those times where you're just able to pull Murlocs and get them to push. Well, TicTac finds resources off the top with the Stonehill Defender. Gets himself an extra minion on board to contest Eloise's pressure coming in. And again, the most important thing is find cards that let you weave in that 2-mana hero power. Don't pick up those 8 drops when you can't play them right away.
It's what the entire Warrior deck is built to do. At this point, you usually don't have many resources, so it's not a problem to weave in the hero power, but when you do pick up something like Stonehill Defender or Direhorn Hatchling, you still have the ability. You've got 2 extra mana laying around, and you've got a really great way to utilize it.
Now, here's a question, right? Eloise, we don't have the story of the game. We haven't looked at every single turn since the beginning.
Yeah, we came in pretty late.
We can assume that at some point she'll have to worry about Brawl, depending on how many were played, if any at all. Because the only card in hand for TicTac that she doesn't know is the Dirty Rat Execute. The Dirty Rat, that is, because Execute's been sitting there for a while, so she can assume it's either Execute or Brawl in spots like these, or a Shield Slam that can no longer be used.
Look at this power turn from Eloise.
Seems good.
Sunkeeper Tarim used so well. Finja living on board because of the War Leader pulled from deck, but a Brawl for TicTac. Okay.
Here we go. Oh, the Deathwing being pulled! Well, I mean, he could live.
He could live.
He could live. I've seen that happen before.
Deathwing lives, Eloise wins the game.
And, that's unfortunate.
So close, but yet so far. And Eloise down to 4 health. Rag Light Lord can heal her back up to 12. But suddenly TicTac is looking like he has a much better shot in this game. And it's because of that Brawl.
Yeah, I mean, an AoE here would do a lot of work, right? The issue is TicTac's just dead next turn. He'd need to find a Ravaging Ghoul, Whirlwind to get rid of Ragnaros with the Execute, and then Hero Power Face over 2 turns. That is a very big ask in this spot.
Dirty Rat's really risky. You know Eloise likely has at least 1 minion in hand. He gets the snipe on the Rag Light Lord. That's exactly what TicTac needed, once again, to keep him in this game.
I mean, it doesn't mean he's going to be able to win, because he's looking at 14 health, no armor generation. Granted, the deck contains enough taunts.
True.
That the draws can improve his chances of staying alive. But now he's considering, you know, I've seen Tyrion, I've seen Ragnaros Light Lord. What's left in that hand the Dirty Rat pulled that bothers me? And I feel like it's kind of risky to commit more.
But I think you kind of have to go for it. The thing is, War Leader comes down, Megasaur can buff these minions, and that's probably just going to be all she wrote, folks.
Yeah, double gentle Megasaur. Pick your choice of Wind Fury plus 3 attack, whatever it is.
You want Bloodlust, you want Wind Fury on everything.
Let's go.
Maybe even both.
Plus 3 attack is right there. We've got the Bloodlust on the Murlocs.
That's going to be game
These guys
for Eloise. Yep, TicTac with the concede. Knows he's lost this one. Almost had fought his way back into this game. But Eloise is going to take it. Go up 2-0.
Yeah, it still looks like the Control Paladin, or at least a mid-range deck with the Deathwing in it, is working out. I don't know if there was any information from TicTac's side. Did he know there was a Deathwing? Either way, now he's aware of it.
I imagine it was a bit of a surprise.
Yeah.
Unless he'd seen it in the first game. Obviously, we didn't get to catch the first game. Maybe Eloise had made some use out of that Deathwing. But regardless, the Paladin is now still on the table for Eloise, and TicTac needs to fight back with that Druid. 3 games. We just saw Terrence do it with his Paladin. Can TicTac do it with the Druid?
It's a really big, if the Paladin gets the early Murloc curve, you have nothing to push them off of it. It takes a lot of effort to get it done, and it's really not as easy as it seems.
Druid has always lacked really efficient AoE. They lost their spot removal as Mulch rotated out of the format. But Jade Druid is still a very formidable deck. Unfortunately for TicTac, Eloise is running a bit of a heavier build, so her early game naturally will be weaker than the Paladin that we saw from Terrence and from Deathbooz.
Yeah, we see the Spellbreaker in the Paladin deck. I mean, we've seen the resurgence of Owl and Spellbreaker in many decks as a means to counter the often seen Tyrions. You know, that is one of the cards that seems to bait the most silences, or at least eat the most of them. So that's been a bit of an issue. However, Eloise picking up the Murloc War Leader here could go for a bit of an aggressive push. Protect them behind Wicker Flame first, perhaps. That's another possibility. But I like the double Murloc into Megasaur curve for the sake of putting the Druid on the back foot, because you know on turn 3, they want a Jade Blossom.
Yeah. Well, Murloc War Leader is really only vulnerable to Wrath and Swipe from the Druid, so playing down Wicker Flame wouldn't protect it necessarily. So I think this is just the more aggressive play, and Eloise certainly making the right call. And what are we going to see from Megasaur this time?
Oh my goodness.
+3 health, Noxious. Wind Fury looked really good at first, but if you can give these Murlocs the staying power they need, that means the War Leader's not dying. TicTac has a slow start with this deck, and Eloise is going to be able to push more damage overall than she would have been able to with Wind Fury.
She is capitalizing on this like no tomorrow. And I don't even know what TicTac can do. I mean, he's got to ramp up with Nourish, but I mean, you're taking at the very least 12 next turn, right?
I mean, you can get down Blood Mage and attempt to cycle for one, but
There's a Spellbreaker there.
yes, there is 12 on board for Eloise, puts TicTac at 8.
Do you ever Spellbreak the Talnos, or is it better to Spellbreak a Taunt, like Ancient of War, if you know it's in the deck, or Jade Behemoth, because you're about to close in for the lethal here.
Yeah. I mean, what is there really that TicTac could draw that would challenge you in any way? If you just play down Wicker Flame and hold the Spellbreaker for a taunt, I think you're good to go.
Yeah, I really like this line of play here. Putting down the Wicker Flame to protect yourself, and then going face again with a really big Murloc curve. We've had the similar situations happen, but Druid is notoriously weak against these types of boards.
Swipe picked up, but it doesn't look like it's going to be enough. TicTac can play down the Ancient of War and taunt it and attempt to shut down 10 damage from Eloise.
Okay, that's not too bad. You've got the Feral Rage with Swipe as well. That's another opportunity to reset the state of the game. Fandral looking too slow. Jade Behemoth looking way too slow. And how do you even get through to this War Leader?
You don't have a way to kill the War Leader outright. You can swipe the Megasaur.
I mean, the only way I can see is you have to swipe the Wicker Flame and then Feral Rage down the War Leader, but then you're dead.
Just Gadgets and give him any outs. You can Feral Rage armor for 8.
Fair enough. Another Innervate off the top. Yeah, I think at this point we're just looking at no possible card saving him. And he's going to scoop it to Eloise's Paladin, going 3-0. What a powerhouse that class is now.
Yeah, Eloise putting on a show here. 3-0 with her slower version of Paladin. Still has the very strong Murloc curve, but then curves out into Deathwing at the very top, which was a lot of fun to see. And now she goes up to a 6-1 record in the tournament.
Oh, look
Giving
at
her
that.
opponent a hug. Eloise is such a pleasant person. She really is.
Rob Wing said he was happier when Eloise was in the room. She just makes everything brighter.
I mean, look at her hair.
Yeah.
It's so colorful, like her personality.
She's a happy
And she's
person.
a fantastic player to